Chapter 21. You look like a friend of mine. The two women walked around all day, leaving their footprints everywhere. In fact, it was more Irisfeel who walked around, and Artoria just followed. It's so interesting here. Irisfeel looked at the city and showed a happy expression. However, Artoria didn't have her leisure time. She kept watching to see if there was an ambush by the enemy. What are we going to do now? Well, we need to wait and see, and then respond flexibly. So, there is no battle plan at all. Yes, that's it. Irisfeel is like a child, sometimes you can't really tell that she is a mother of a child. Irisfeel looked at Saber and said happily, "You know, Saber, I am so happy today, because today, I am, for the first time. I know, this may be your first time here, but this is not a very special place, there is no need." No, you are wrong. Irisfeel's expression changed, like a pitiful little pet. This is my first time leaving the castle. That's what they told me. Artoria's face changed, but I also know a lot. He often tells me some happy things, and many stories and movies outside. Irisfeel's face was full of envy. Who would have thought that this noble woman like a princess would envy such an ordinary person? But this is the first time I see the real life of people. Irisfeel showed an extremely bright smile. Saber, thank you. Artoria didn't say anything. She just bowed slightly and stretched out a hand. Saber, although I am not your prince, I am honored to be the knight who protects the princess, so next, I will protect your safety. Saber, thank you. Quote, Irisfeel hugged Saber directly, and this scene made people around look sideways. Of course, the two of them didn't feel anything. In this case, let's go for a walk. Happy Irisfeel hugged Saber and left here. Then, the two King Arthurs met in this small movie theater. Artoria came over, looked at Arthur, and said lightly, "You feel very familiar." Familiar? Of course, they are both King Arthur. Even if the male and female versions are very different, it is inevitable to feel a little familiar. Maybe, we have a destined fate. Arthur looked at Artoria teasingly. Artoria and Arthur are distinguished from now on. You are not funny at all. Artoria looked at him seriously. Yes, how can you chase a girl so directly? Irisfeel was also very angry. However, why do you look like your boyfriend was robbed? In fact, it is like this. After all, Saber is the first man who has dated her in the true sense. How can I not be angry? However, the heavens are witnesses. Arthur is telling the truth. The two of them are indeed destined to be together. How can this be possible? Bedivere also stood up at this time. She looked at Artoria nervously. This woman, she felt, had such a strong aura. Just like a king. As a guardian knight, Bedivere wanted to protect the king in front of him like a conditioned reflex. You are tense all over, as if you are ready to fight at any time. You have a well-proportioned figure, but your muscles are perfect. It can be seen that you are very strong. Moreover, you showed murderous intent to me just now. Is it because of him? Damn, Arthur was stunned by Artoria's scene. There was no need for that. I never thought of being your enemy. Don't be so nervous, okay? Yes. You are the powerful guy next to Tokiomi Tasaka. Why are you here? Irisfeel suddenly reacted and looked at Arthur nervously. Stop, don't be nervous. I just want to take two little girls to watch a movie. You guys, there is no need. Arthur was very helpless. Who would have thought that he would have so many things just passing by? In that case, let's watch it together. Irisfeel actually. Agreed. Irisfeel, you. Saber looked at Irisfeel nervously. She didn't understand why she invited a guy who might be an enemy to watch a movie together. In fact, Irisfeel was also very curious. She clearly summoned King Arthur, so who was this Arthur? At first, she thought it was a knight of the round table, but looking at Artoria's expression, it didn't look like that. Well, it's better to obey than to be respectful, Arthur said with a smile. Then, he took the two little girls directly into the field. Artoria followed helplessly. When she met Bedivere, the two walked side by side. Artoria looked at Bedivere and said slowly, "Actually, I have one more thing to say. I feel that you are very similar to a friend of mine." After Artoria finished speaking, she left here directly. Bedivere also followed. Of course, the two did not know that these two people, one was the female version of the king she respected most, and the other was the male version of her favorite knight. I have to say that this world is really interesting, and Arthur, a guy with a bad taste, has not told Artoria his identity yet, which is really boring. Chapter 22. Two King Arthurs evaluate. King Arthur. The movie played intensely on the big screen. Throughout the film, the two groups remained silent, not exchanging a single word, until the very end. Brother, is the story of King Arthur really like this? Ilisfil tilted her head and looked up at Arthur, her eyes wide with innocent curiosity. King Arthur is, of course, great and invincible. Bedivere responded immediately with firm conviction. Artoria, standing beside her, was taken aback. Why is she praising me so much all of a sudden? However, Arthur's opinion sharply contrasted. King Arthur, he muttered, his voice calm but piercing. He's just a poor soul. A man without identity, without dreams. His so-called ideal only led to his ruin. Foolish, far too foolish. I wonder if he ever truly lived for himself, even for a single day. He wasn't referring to himself, of course. These words were directed at Artoria. Naturally, she heard him. I don't think the story of King Arthur is wrong, Artoria replied quietly. To dedicate oneself to the country and its people, that is the duty of a king. But, it's true, he didn't act as a good king. She looked Arthur in the eye, her words honest and full of reflection. Arthur opened his mouth to speak, but before he could respond, someone else cut in. That story is definitely not accurate. Irisfil interrupted with an indignant tone, her expression clearly showing displeasure. Let's leave everything else aside, but come on, King Arthur is a woman. How could any of that have happened? Did they think Saber would do something like that? I think. Irisfil had let something slip in her frustration, and though she quickly tried to recover, Arthur didn't react harshly. He simply smiled faintly. He understood Artoria far better than Irisfil did. King Arthur can't be a woman. That single sentence caused an uproar. It was like kicking a hornet's nest. The two beauties on the other side, one older and two younger, instantly erupted with anger. Arthur and Artoria both held their heads in pain as chaos unfolded in front of them. Irisfil, let's go, Saber exclaimed, grabbing Irisfil's hand and turning to leave. The commotion had drawn the attention of everyone nearby. People were staring at them as if they were mad. King Arthur is a woman. What a joke, they whispered. Even though Saber had always conducted herself as a man, she was still fully aware of her true gender, and very much a woman. Arthur watched the scene unfold with a weary look. He didn't even know where to begin. It's fine if they want to argue, but Bedivere, why are you joining in? 2. What he didn't realize was that Bedivere was the angriest of them all. If King Arthur was a woman, then doesn't that mean her thoughts trailed off, overwhelmed by the implications. Like Lancelot, no, I can't accept that. Without saying another word, Arthur walked over and scooped up the two little girls. All right, let's go, it's time to head home. He shot Bedivere a helpless look before leaving with the children in his arms. When they passed by Artoria, Arthur leaned in and whispered softly, "Goodbye, Artoria. We'll meet again soon." And with that, he walked away, leaving a stunned Saber behind. Who is he? Artoria murmured to herself. Why do I see my own shadow in him? Ridiculous. Meanwhile, Arthur had escorted the girls home and was about to take his leave when Bedivere appeared outside. King, she called softly. Arthur smiled at her. What is it? Are you going to ask about that heroic spirit from earlier? Yes, I'm very curious. There's nothing to be curious about, Arthur said casually. This world is full of alternate possibilities. If I told you that she, too, is King Arthur, would you believe it? I would never doubt your words, my king, Bedivere answered firmly, though her eyes showed uncertainty. Arthur chuckled. Then protect them well. Yes. He turned to leave, but suddenly, he paused, sensing something. Oh, he finally made his move. Ha, interesting. And just like that, Arthur vanished, leaving Bedivere frozen in place. Is it really possible that King Arthur is a woman? She murmured to herself, but no one was left to answer her question. It was late, but two figures still strolled along the shoreline. A silver-haired beauty ran barefoot across the beach, her laughter light and free, while a knight in male clothing stood quietly behind, watching her. It was Irisfil's first time seeing the sea, and she was overjoyed. It's so beautiful, the ocean at night is so calm. She listened to the waves, the moonlight casting a gentle glow over the waters. Her face lit up with a soft smile. I never imagined I'd be able to walk along the shore like this with my knight. Saber raised an eyebrow, then said teasingly, So, are you satisfied with your knight, princess? Irisfil blinked, surprised by Saber's uncharacteristic playfulness. Dear Saber, you're the greatest knight in my heart. Thank you for your praise, my princess. Irisfil blushed slightly at Saber's gentle tone and elegant demeanor. Suddenly, Saber stepped closer, her expression turning serious. Irisveal, she said, her tone cautious, do you sense that? Yes, Irisveal replied at once. Is it an enemy? Indeed. A powerful presence, deliberately exposing itself. Shall we approach? Is this a challenge? Saber narrowed her eyes. Seeing Irisveal so composed, Saber felt a rare sense of satisfaction. She's already showing the spirit of a true master. Far more promising than Emiya Kuritsugu, who had yet to reveal himself. I see, in that case, the enemy must be a heroic spirit who prefers direct confrontation. If he dares to challenge openly, Saber said with resolve, then he is worthy of my blade. Irisveal smiled. Then let's face him together. As you wish. Saber, who is that person? Will that man appear again today, and just what is his true identity? Chapter 23. Clash beneath the moonlit sky. Artoria stepped forward with unwavering determination. Her expression was calm, composed, and devoid of even a trace of nervousness. Close behind her followed Irisveal, her eyes filled with trust. She wasn't afraid. She believed in Artoria with her whole heart. Far above the estuary, on a towering bridge overlooking the battlefield, two figures observed the scene from the shadows. Waver. Velvet was petrified. They were so high up, suspended on the bridge like some daredevil act, and the sheer drop below made his knees tremble uncontrollably. Next to him stood a towering man, his presence regal and commanding, the servant rider, Iskander, the king of conquerors. Our rider. I don't like this. I want to go back. Let's go home. Waver's voice cracked with fear as he clutched the iron beam beside him for dear life, his knuckles white from the strain. This vantage point is ideal. Just stay still and observe. The battle that's about to unfold, it's something you shouldn't miss. Waver had initially tried to charge in, but Iskander had stopped him with a single look. There was something in Ryder's eyes, wise and calculating. Despite his bold and seemingly brash demeanor, Iskander possessed a strategist's mind, honed through countless campaigns. The enemy clearly wants to assess our strength. I'd wager there are more than just 2 servants in play here. At least 3, possibly more. Waver nodded instinctively. Despite the fear, he couldn't help but admire how insightful his servant was. It was clear now, Iskander was not merely a brute king, he was a conqueror with intellect and vision. If 2 other servants fought to the death, then all they needed to do was wait. When both sides were worn out, Iskander could sweep in and claim victory like a lion stealing prey from 2 exhausted predators. Yes, that was the plan. A classic fisherman's gambit, let the clam and the snipe struggle until the net descends. Waver understood. He really did. But, did they have to do this from such a terrifying height? One misstep, and they'd be little more than a smear at the bottom of the gorge. I can't. I'm gonna fall. Ryder, please, let's go back. Come now, you're a man, aren't you? Don't be afraid of a little height. Besides, training your observation skills is just as vital as wielding a weapon. Iskander waved off Waver's panic. In his eyes, fear was meaningless. With a hearty laugh, Iskander casually flicked Waver on the back of the head. Ah, don't. Waver clung to the bridge's support like a lifeline. His limbs refused to move, and the conqueror's idea of tough love wasn't helping. Ha ha ha, you're far too timid, boy. Iskander roared with laughter, amused at his master's distress, but Waver felt no such joy. He still couldn't figure out how he ended up with such a servant. I want to go back. I'm done with this suicidal scouting. Shish, quiet now, look closely, someone's approaching. What? Iskander narrowed his eyes, his expression sharpening. 2 servants. One's definitely Saber. The other, Lancer, perhaps. Ho, this will be interesting. So, what now? Let's enjoy the show. When the moment's right, we'll descend. Though he wore a jovial smile, Iskander's aura had shifted. His spirit was like that of a beast lying in wait, silent, patient, deadly. Waver, of course, missed all of this. He only wanted to survive the night and get back to solid ground. On the battlefield below, Artoria and Irisveal advanced with dignity, heads held high. They walked with the grace of champions, unfazed by the tension in the air. Ahead of them, another figure emerged, confident, poised, and unflinching. The 2 servants stopped just meters apart. 4 eyes locked across the distance. The opposing servant held an unusually long spear, taller than himself, and in his other hand, a much shorter one. Odd, most lancers didn't dual-wield like that. But Saber could tell instantly, the aura, the posture, the fluid stance, this man was Lancer, no doubt. However, Both spears were wrapped in seals of concealment, keeping their true forms, and their noble phantasms, hidden. She'd never seen such an unusual combination before. For Lancer, this setup was also frustrating. He was trained in both sword and spear, but being summoned as Lancer meant he couldn't wield swords in this war. Thus, he had to adapt to dual-wielding spears, his long-range precision and close combat finesse combined into one deadly style. Excellent. Finally, someone worth fighting has appeared, Lancer said with a smile. You carry a sharp aura. Are you Saber, by chance? I am, and you must be Lancer. Indeed. A pity we cannot speak our true names before battle. It's always an annoyance. Saber nodded. She felt the same. In any case, Lancer said, raising his spears, I consider it an honor to face you. Saber returned the smile, a calm, warrior's smile, forged through countless trials of blood and steel. Then let us begin. Lancer lowered into a stance, the long spear leading and the short one tucked behind like the wings of a poised hawk. Both spears glinted coldly in the moonlight. Saber inhaled deeply, her body radiating magical energy. A flash of azure and silver erupted around her as her armor manifested, blue, silver-trimmed, regal. The armor of the King of Knights. At that moment, King Arthur had returned in full glory. Saber. Irisfeel breathed in awe. The power those two radiated was overwhelming. She knew she couldn't contribute much in a direct fight, but she still wanted to do something, anything. Saber, be careful. I only know basic healing magic, don't push yourself too far. Saber gave a small nod. For her, getting injured wasn't even a consideration. I'll defeat Lancer, but keep your guard up, his master hasn't revealed himself yet. That's not normal. Indeed, only Lancer had shown himself. His master had yet to appear. That alone suggested a hidden threat. He may be planning something from the shadows. Irisfeel, I'm entrusting my back to you. There was no fear in Saber's eyes. Even if the opponent was a powerful heroic spirit, she had unshakable faith in her master. Kuritsugu filtered, as always. I wish you luck and strength in battle. Thank you. Saber adjusted her stance, taking a slow, steady step forward. All around her, the winds whispered with the tension of battle. The sky above grew darker, as though nature itself held its breath. The confrontation had begun, and from above the battlefield, unseen by most, the storm surged beneath the moonlit sky. Chapter 24, The King and the Lancer, Clash of Ideals. Irisfeel stared blankly at the battle unfolding before her. She never imagined that a clash of cold weapons could be this intense. Sparks flew as steel met steel. The chilling gleam of blades flashed under the moonlight. Attack met counterattack, parry followed by riposte. It was a spectacle that modern times had long since forgotten. Not only did the clash of weapons ring out through the air, but the mana surging from both combatants stirred up violent shockwaves, as if the magic itself resented being contained. If the clash of blades was the melody, then the roars of displaced wind were the drums of war. The ground was splintered and torn, chunks of stone blasted skyward. Nearby lampposts were sliced cleanly in two by the residual energy from the warriors' strikes. Irisfeel could no longer make out the positions of the fighters. Even the sound of weapons clashing had become indistinct. All that remained was a storm of flashing silver light. Walls crumbled, signs were blown away. Irisfeel had no way of understanding what exactly was happening, only that all of this destruction was collateral damage from a battle between heroes. As the confrontation escalated, the entire street was reduced to chaos. With the way things were going, it was unlikely the street would survive their clash. This is the war of heroic spirits. The realization sent a tremor through Irisfeel's heart. This is mythology incarnate. Lightning, thunder, wind, and devastation, brought to life. What a terrifying battle, she muttered, unable to look away. And she wasn't the only one shocked. Artoria, too, was surprised even as she fought. Spears, in the modern world, were weapons that required two hands. But in the hands of the opposing heroic spirit, Diarmuid Adwine, this rule no longer applied. He wielded one long spear in one hand, used primarily for attack, and a shorter spear in the other for defense. The moment Artoria closed the distance, he would swap the two seamlessly, executing flawless offense and defense. But, which spear was his real trump card? Artoria's gaze sharpened. She could sense it. Diarmuid was a formidable opponent. Most people would subconsciously favor the weapon they trusted most. That was usually the clue that separated the real from the decoy. But, every one of Artoria's strikes was met with resistance. His mastery over his dual spears was incredibly refined, nearly flawless. Saber, are you going to give up? Diarmuid called out mid-battle. Of course not. Artoria's eyes narrowed. She was King Arthur, she would never surrender. With a burst of speed, Diarmuid charged in, unleashing a relentless chain of coordinated strikes. His movements were elegant, almost divine, every blow flowing perfectly into the next, his rhythm impossible to disrupt. Artoria found herself forced onto the defensive. What kind of person has this level of spearmanship? What a powerful servant, Saber commented instinctively. But Diarmuid, too, was starting to feel the strain. He had already used every technique he could think of, but the girl in front of him never wavered. None of his attacks had broken through. She's terrifying, he admitted to himself. Of course, Diarmuid didn't yet realize that Saber possessed the ability known as instinct, a supernatural sense that let her detect and avoid danger almost before it occurred. Again, Diarmuid smiled bitterly. He couldn't see through her sword at all. Her physical attributes surpassed his, and her swordsmanship was flawless. Just my luck, why did I have to fight someone like this? From a nearby rooftop, a young man named Arthur, an observer, not a participant, was watching with great interest. He even had a bottle of Coke and popcorn in hand. How is it? Pretty strong, right? He said to the girl standing beside him. She's another you. Of course she's strong, the girl replied dryly, her tone unreadable. Yet the glint in her eyes showed she was itching to jump into the fight herself. I wonder which is stronger, my swordsmanship, or his spearmanship. Hey now, calm yourself, Arthur warned. Don't mess things up too early. It's not our time to appear yet. Seeing her excited expression, Arthur felt a chill. If this girl jumped into the fray now, all his carefully laid plans would fall apart. No need to nag me. I get it already. Geez, so annoying, the girl huffed. But Arthur knew her well. He wouldn't have abandoned Guinevere otherwise. That ship had sailed, and taken 2 beautiful women with it. Still, keeping the power within the group wasn't such a bad idea. With a chuckle, Arthur turned back to the fight. On the battlefield, Saber pressed forward. Thanks to invisible air, the wind-shrouded barrier that cloaked her sword, Diarmuid couldn't track her blade's trajectory. He was forced to rely purely on prediction. But mere prediction could never match Artoria's overwhelming, storm-like onslaught. This heroic spirit, she's truly a strong opponent. Diarmuid stared at her unwavering resolve and could only sigh internally. Looks like I'll have to go all out. Far away, within the city, a different man was watching the same battle, through the eyes of his servant. Kire Kodamine sat quietly, eyes closed. But he was far from resting. Using Assassin's presence, he observed the fight through shared vision. Just yesterday, he and Tasaka Tokiomi had staged a brilliant deception, using a clone of Assassin to trick the other masters, everyone except Tokiomi. The battle has begun, Kire reported into an odd device in front of him, something resembling a phonograph. Yes, they're both quite skilled, came the slightly muffled voice of Tokiomi Tasaka from the other end. This antique phonograph was something Tokiomi had specifically chosen over modern devices, his pride in magecraft preventing him from using technology like a regular telephone. Ironically, Tokiomi's caution proved wise. No tech-savvy magus would ever suspect this magical device of eavesdropping. Both servants are incredibly powerful, especially the female one, Kire continued. Almost all her stats are ranked A. Even those 2 servants might not. Don't speak carelessly, Kire, Tokiomi interrupted. Those 2 don't rely on physical stats alone. I haven't even seen their true strength yet. There's something else, Kire said. Another woman stands behind the female servant. What? That doesn't add up. According to our intel, the one involved in this battle should be that magician's pawn. Kuritsugu Emiya. No, teacher, it's definitely a Western woman. Silence followed on the other end. Then, another homunculus, perhaps. It seems they don't trust outsiders completely. So, this woman is the master. Most likely. A strange feeling stirred in Kire's chest. He couldn't explain it. Something was missing. But what? Keep watching, Kire. Yes, teacher. But Kire's focus had already shifted. In his mind, only one name echoed. Kuritsugu Emiya, and the man himself. Kuritsugu had already detected Assassin's presence. Still, he allowed Maya Hisao to keep tabs on Assassin's movements. He remained where he was, continuing to monitor Lancer's performance with a cold, calculating gaze. Saber, can you win against him with just your strength? He exhaled quietly, not knowing the answer. Chapter 25, Noble Phantasm Release. The battle between Artoria and Diarmuid had become increasingly intense, reaching a fever pitch. The streetlights around them had collapsed, the walls nearby lay in ruins, and even a large section of asphalt had been torn from the ground. Cracks spider-webbed across the battlefield, turning the entire area into a devastated wasteland. Yet amid the destruction, the two warriors stood firmly, their eyes locked on each other. They remained still, closely observing their opponent's slightest movements, neither willing to be the first to falter. Diarmuid, twirling the lance in his hand with ease, smiled lightly and said, "Such an intense battle, and you're not even winded. For a woman, that's honestly impressive." Artoria returned a faint smile, her stance still unwavering. "Thank you for the compliment, Lancer." Though they stood locked in battle, a mutual respect began to blossom between them. "Though I don't know your name," Artoria continued, "I'm truly glad to have faced you in combat." That sentiment was mutual. They both saw in the other a worthy opponent, a true warrior to test their strength against. And that mutual recognition only heightened their anticipation for the clash to come. However, at that moment, "Finish it quickly, Lancer." A voice, sharp and commanding, echoed through the air. Artoria's expression tensed as she scanned the surroundings. That voice, is that your master? Both she and Diarmuid searched for the hidden master, but no matter where they looked, the presence remained concealed. "Time is short. End it now, Lancer. You're permitted to use your noble phantasm." Artoria's heart skipped a beat. Was the enemy finally about to unleash his heroic spirit's trump card? "Understood, my master," Diarmuid said calmly. What he did next made Artoria's eyes narrow in caution. He tossed his short spear aside. "So that long spear is the noble phantasm," she murmured. Diarmuid unraveled the sealing charm wrapped around his longer lance. At last, its true form was revealed, a crimson spear radiating an ominous magical aura. "Kill her." Gripping the spear with both hands, Diarmuid's aura shifted. Artoria instantly raised her sword in anticipation. A heavy silence fell between them. Neither warrior dared move recklessly, knowing that a single misstep could turn the tide. Eventually, Diarmuid's patience gave way, and he lunged forward with a straightforward thrust. Artoria easily deflected the attack. But then, something strange happened. A gust of wind erupted from the point of contact between sword and spear. Not good. Sensing danger, Artoria leapt back immediately. The wind wasn't unusual in itself, but it had originated from her sword. That shouldn't have been possible. "So, I see your sword now." Diarmuid's voice rang with satisfaction. Watching from a distance, both Arthur and Irisfeel gasped, finally realizing what had happened. The Crimson Spear, Gaheris, the Crimson Rose of Exorcism, was a noble phantasm that nullified magic. It had disrupted the invisible air, the magical barrier that concealed Excalibur's form. "Your sword can no longer be hidden," Diarmuid said with a confident smirk. With her secret revealed, Diarmuid pressed his assault. His strikes became fiercer, forcing Artoria onto the defensive. Her golden sword now gleamed in plain view, its divine aura laid bare. The wind intensified as Artoria tried to regain her footing. Gust after gust surrounded her sword, invisible air was beginning to rupture under the strain. At last, the barrier shattered, and golden light flooded the battlefield. That spear! Artoria stared at Gaheris, knowing now that Diarmuid's power wasn't in overwhelming force, but in cutting through magic itself. In the flurry of exchanged blows, Artoria spotted a small opening. "This strike, if I use my armor to absorb it, I can land a clean counter." Without hesitation, she lunged forward, ignoring the crimson spear aiming at her abdomen. But pain surged through her instantly, shocking her back to reality. She gritted her teeth and immediately switched to defense, slashing at the approaching spear to push it away. She was half a step too slow. A splash of crimson sprayed into the air. Artoria had been wounded. Gasping, she took a step back and glanced down at her abdomen. Saber. From the sideline, Irisfeel rushed forward in a panic, casting healing magic without a second thought. "Thank you, Irisfeel," Artoria murmured as the pain faded. "The wound's been healed." She turned her eyes back to her opponent, resolve hardening once more. "It seems I won't be able to finish this as easily as I'd hoped." Diarmuid looked at Artoria with something close to joy. A real opponent at last, a warrior who could match his strength. This woman is a true knight. As Artoria's thoughts raced, she realized something shocking. Her armor had vanished in that moment. Of course, with invisible air destroyed, her armor, also woven through with magic, had been disrupted. This spear can really nullify magic. Though its offensive power wasn't overwhelming, Gaheris was terrifying in its effect. It ignored magical defenses entirely. In front of me, Diarmuid said with a smirk, it's as if you're wearing nothing at all. His words were suggestive, but Artoria remained composed. Don't get cocky. Artoria took a deep breath. Now that she understood his weapon, she could formulate a plan. Her armor faded, vanishing into motes of light as she dismissed it voluntarily. Since you're ignoring my defense, I won't defend. I'll just be faster than you. Without the weight of armor, Artoria moved more freely. She could reallocate her magic to speed and precision. If I must sacrifice to win, then so be it. Are you gambling at all? Diarmuid asked. Artoria didn't reply. Her mind was razor-focused. Without armor, she could maneuver effortlessly, and conserve mana in the process, vital in a drawn-out battle. You're decisive. I admire that, Diarmuid said with a grin. But Artoria didn't react to his provocations. She studied his movements, calculating every step. Suddenly, the air roared. Strong winds spiraled around her as invisible air surged, this time not to conceal, but to propel. Wind King's strike. A blast of compressed wind pressure exploded behind her, acting like a jet engine. Artoria shot forward like a beam of light. She had surpassed the speed of sound. But even in that moment, Diarmuid began to retreat, shifting toward the spot where his short spear had landed. No, Artoria's eyes widened. I've made a mistake. Diarmuid's expression said it all. He had been planning this from the start. I've won, his smile seemed to say. He kicked up a cloud of dust, and from within it, a second spear shot forth. The short spear, Gawain, the yellow rose of mortality, was no longer sealed. It flew straight toward Artoria like a lightning bolt. Only now did she realize. He wields two noble phantasms. He's a dual lancer. The golden spear was already upon her. It gleamed with killing intent, its curse ensured that any wound it inflicted would not heal by natural or magical means. Death was approaching. Artoria clenched her jaw. She had to go all out. Her sword was already racing toward Diarmuid. This time, both of them would be struck. A mutual wound. All this fighting and killing, isn't it exhausting? Suddenly, a figure appeared between the two warriors. Artoria's sword halted instantly. She stared in surprise. Chapter 26. Heroic Spirits Gathering. The two noble phantasms struck the figure in the middle at the same time. But in that instant, a powerful surge of magical energy erupted from Arthur, and a flash of golden light burst out, repelling both attackers with overwhelming force. Seeing this, Artoria was stunned. She was fully aware of the power behind her strike. And for the opposing heroic spirit to respond with such intensity, using that kind of noble phantasm as an offensive tool, the attack had to be devastating. Yet, it was completely blocked. Arthur's defense remained unbroken. At the very least, nothing so far had been able to pierce through Avalon. As Artoria was knocked back through the air, she braced for impact with the cold, unforgiving ground. But instead of hitting it, she found herself caught in a warm embrace. Are you all right? Arthur's gentle voice echoed in her ears. Artoria looked up at Arthur, then immediately pulled away and stood to the side. Thank you for the help. But until we can determine whether we are allies or enemies, it's best we keep some distance. She wasn't some naive girl easily swayed by emotions, her personality would never allow such wandering thoughts. Arthur saw the guarded look in Artoria's eyes and could only shrug helplessly. In an effort to hide his slight embarrassment, he turned and faced Diarmuid Uadwine. The Lancer-class servant was already recovering and voiced his displeasure. It is unbefitting of a knight to interrupt a duel between warriors. If you'd continued, both sides would have been seriously injured, Arthur responded coolly. I merely acted on instinct. But it was clear from Diarmuid's expression that he wasn't convinced. Arthur casually picked up the pistol that had fallen to the side and tossed it to Diarmuid, who caught it without issue. Do you know who she is? Arthur gestured toward Artoria. Artoria walked forward, now speaking directly to Diarmuid. That spear's of yours, it's a noble phantasm, isn't it? Correct, Diarmuid confirmed. As you saw, Gaedirg, the Crimson Spear, can disrupt the flow of magical energy, neutralizing magecraft and noble phantasms alike. Since Artoria had already deduced the effect, Diarmuid had no reason to conceal its nature. But you've yet to see my other noble phantasm. He raised his second weapon and gently brushed off the dust that had settled on it. This is Gawain, the yellow spear. Its wounds are cursed, they do not heal. Even the most potent healing magecraft is powerless against it. Artoria listened carefully. 2 spears, one to dispel magical defenses and the other to inflict incurable wounds. Coupled with his striking appearance and reputation for charming women, she had no doubt about his identity. The chief warrior of the Fianna, the peerless lancer from Celtic legend. Dear Mudu Adween. She narrowed her eyes. I didn't expect to meet you here in this Holy Grail war. Diarmuid smiled. The Grail works in mysterious ways. And I must say, I recognize your golden blade. His identity revealed, Diarmuid wasn't bothered in the least. To face the legendary King of Knights is an honor in itself. Then you should know King Arthur possesses a skill called instinct, essentially precognition in battle, Arthur said with a grin. I could tell your attack wasn't fatal. No, Artoria interjected firmly. If I'd kept going, I would have been wounded for sure. A minor injury is hardly worth mentioning. Even if Saber lost an arm, she could still fight with one. She might not be able to unleash Excalibur, but her combat prowess was still formidable. That was the spirit of a knight. Yet, Artoria couldn't help but admire Diarmuid's strength, and his chivalry. The feeling was mutual between Diarmuid and Arthur. The two were evenly matched. Worthy rivals. The Holy Grail will be mine. No, it belongs to me. Arthur stood between them with a pained smile. Can you two stop being so intense? I just saved both your lives. Dash dash dash. Meanwhile, on a distant bridge. How fascinating. I didn't expect anyone to interfere. Iskander, the rider-class servant, grinned as he watched the events unfold from afar. What is it? Asked Waver Velvet, his master, noticing the amused expression on the King of Conquerors' face. Just as Lancer and Saber were about to go all out, another heroic spirit stepped in. Who would be foolish enough to do that? Smack. Waver yelped as Iskander slapped him lightly on the head. I was planning to wait until all the heroic spirits revealed themselves before charging in, but that might not be possible anymore. Why not? Isn't the plan to wait until everyone's weakened and then swoop in to collect the kills? Oh, what are you thinking, Master? Iskander raised an eyebrow, amused. I mean, if we wait for all of them to tire each other out, we can clean up. Isn't that the best strategy? Ahahaha. Quote. Iskander stared at him blankly. Wait until everyone gathers, then take them all out. Exactly. We'll take out every legendary heroic spirit at once. How exciting would that be? You truly are my master, Iskander said, bursting into hearty laughter. But we cannot let such brave warriors pass us by. There are 3 heroic spirits out there, daring to reveal themselves so boldly. That takes courage. You want to fight them now? I thought you were going to wait. This is the Holy Grail War, Waver. Watching from the sidelines is meaningless. A true king fights with honor. With that, Iskander raised his sword, magical energy crackling around him. A surge of mana signaled the activation of his noble phantasm. Let's go, Master. It's our turn to appear. He leapt onto his massive ox chariot, Gordius wheel, ready for battle. Hey, get back here, idiot. You're going to ruin everything. Oh, if you're not coming, that's fine. I'll go alone. Wait. No, I'm coming. Wait for me. Haha, that's the spirit. You're truly my master. Iskander laughed loudly, hoisted Waver into the chariot, and with a shout. Let's ride. Thunder cracked as the chariot blazed forward, lightning trailing behind them, illuminating the night sky. Chapter 27, The Fool Conqueror. The two servants stood facing each other in the field, the tension between them thick enough to cut with a sword. But at that moment, a brilliant flash of lightning streaked across the silent night sky, like a falling star tearing through the darkness. What is that? Both Artoria Pendragon and Diarmuid Adween looked up instinctively, eyes locked on the source of the sudden light. Even Arthur raised his gaze to the heavens. Oh, that light. Seems like someone flashy is making an entrance. From the distant horizon, something rapidly approached, an object flying through the air, wreathed in crackling blue and violet lightning. Irisviel, the inexperienced newcomer, stared in awe, completely dumbfounded. Is that a bull? Shock swept over the field. What soared through the sky wasn't a meteor, but a massive chariot pulled by 2 mighty bulls. Not ordinary ones, but divine beasts racing across the sky with nothing beneath their hooves but pure, destructive lightning. The magic radiating from the lightning was overwhelming. Only a noble phantasm of the highest caliber could contain such immense magical energy. This wasn't something that belonged to a mere human. No, this heralded the arrival of a heroic spirit of staggering power. So much magical energy, terrifying. An ancient chariot, summoned in a storm of power. Who could it belong to? The chariot roared overhead, lightning crackling like a divine trumpet. Arthur narrowed his eyes, jaw twitching. TCH, this idiot's making a bigger entrance than me. Irritated, Arthur discreetly summoned invisible air, forming an unseen barrier directly in front of the charging chariot. Though it couldn't possibly harm such a powerful noble phantasm, it might trip it up for just a moment. And it did. The chariot dipped, veering off course before slamming into the earth with a thunderous crash, sending dirt and debris flying. Cough, cough, you lot, cough, stop causing trouble. The rider emerged from the dust, coughing dramatically, not from pain, but pure showmanship. Artoria sighed and turned a sharp look toward Arthur, clearly sensing he was behind the interruption. Arthur, of course, feigned innocence and admired the horizon. Then came the booming voice. I am the king of conquerors. Iskander, Alexander the Great. Do not act rudely in my presence. The man stood tall and proud, his voice echoing like a lion's roar. Everyone, even the servants, stood in stunned silence. What kind of heroic spirit immediately reveals their true name like that? The only one more stunned than the rest was Waver Velvet, the young master of rider. He looked like his soul had left his body. What the hell are you saying, you idiot? Waver rushed over, grabbing Iskander's cloak and yanking it in frustration. Humph. With just a low grunt, Waver froze, paralyzed by the overwhelming presence radiating from the towering king. Arthur couldn't help but think to himself, with the way Waver clings to Iskander like that, the princess nickname really isn't too far off. Iskander turned to face the group of servants and masters with arms wide open. Fellow heroic spirits, I, Iskander, king of conquerors, have come to participate in this Holy Grail war. If any of you are willing to offer me the Grail, I will gladly share its blessings with you. Everyone blinked in disbelief. No way, they were completely dumbfounded. What kind of ridiculous proposal is that? But Iskander wasn't done. He was truly a larger-than-life figure, one who didn't hesitate to reveal his identity or ambitions. Yet, no one thought he was lying. A heroic spirit wouldn't stoop to deception about their own legend. I admire your boldness, Diarmuid said with a faint smile. But I already have a king I serve. I cannot grant the Grail to another. He raised his eyes, gleaming with unwavering loyalty. I will present the Holy Grail to my sovereign alone. King of conquerors, you are not that man. Do not interfere with our duel, Artoria added sharply. This is a matter of knights. Her irritation was palpable. A fair and noble duel was sacred to her, and Iskander's intrusion was an affront. Iskander rubbed the back of his neck and sighed. So you're both against me? Annoying. The two snapped in unison. Let me make one thing clear, Artoria said with cold conviction. As the King of Britain, I will never submit to you. Oh, King of Britain, Iskander blinked in surprise. Then he laughed. Wait, you're King Arthur. This little girl. His booming laughter echoed through the night. Ha ha, then let me see the strength of the famed King of Knights. Artoria didn't respond with words, only action. She raised her invisible sword once more, and a massive surge of wind pressure gathered at its edge. So, the negotiations have failed. How disappointing, Iskander muttered, watching her power rise. Meanwhile, from behind the chariot, a small figure emerged, Waver, rubbing his bruised head. Ow, that hurt, that really hurt. See, Waver shouted, pointing accusingly at Iskander. You're always doing stuff like this. You're the worst. He stomped over and began lightly slapping Iskander's armor in frustration. The conqueror just laughed. How do you know unless you try? Try. Waver looked like he might cry as he continued pummeling his servant ineffectively. Watching the two bicker, Arthur sighed. When I imagined the conqueror king, I thought of a ruthless tyrant, someone overwhelming and regal. But now, seeing him in the flesh, he trailed off. His IQ seems questionable. Need more chapters. Give this FIC more power stones. Every 250 stones equals 1 bonus chapter. Chapter 28. Kings Clash Beneath the Stars. So that's how it is. I didn't expect it to be you. A cold voice echoed from a distance, sending a chill down the spines of everyone present. The voice belonged to none other than Lord Elmeloy, Kenneth Archibald, the Master of Lancer, Diarmuid Uadwine. The same man Waver Velvet had once tried so hard to impress, and now betrayed. I truly don't understand what's going through your head, Kenneth continued. And to think, you've entered the Holy Grail War, Waver Velvet. Waver froze as the voice pierced his soul, his breath catching. There was no mistaking that voice. This can't be. Of course, Waver knew who it was. As a high-ranking noble and lecturer at the Clock Tower, Kenneth had the resources to obtain multiple holy relics. It wasn't impossible for him to summon another servant. I've always been fond of my students, Gaheris said mockingly. Waver, you should have stayed in your room, living the life you deserved, meek and quiet. His words felt like magic themselves. Waver found himself dazed, as if transported back to the classroom where Gaheris stood before him, gazing down with that same familiar mix of pity and disdain. But Waver snapped out of it. No, he couldn't waver now. He had taken what was meant to be Gaheris, the relic, the heroic spirit. He had summoned Ryder, and while his servant could be a bit reckless, he was undeniably powerful. They were enemies now, truly. There could be no mercy. Gaheris noticed the change in Waver's eyes and chuckled darkly. In that case, Waver Velvet, let me give you one final lesson, a lesson in how to kill. Waver trembled even harder. Until now, war had always been an abstract concept, something he'd studied from the safety of his books. But now, it stood before him, real and terrifying. Just as fear threatened to paralyze him, a strong, warm hand rested against his back. It was rough, calloused, and reassuring. Oi, you unknown bastard, a booming voice laughed. Trying to take my little master away from me. Iskander, Ryder, stood tall, his grin fearless. Ha ha ha, that's a joke. My master is a warrior who dares to charge into battle alongside me. Not a coward like you. The air turned heavy. Gaheris' fury clashed with Iskander's roaring laughter. Arthur clapped his hands. Now that's how a king should speak. Then he stepped forward, lifting his voice with righteous mockery. Come on, you so-called heroic spirits. Are you all mice, hiding in the shadows? Come out and play. Artoria and Diarmuid paused their duel, startled by his words. What's the matter, unknown servant? Artoria asked, confused by Arthur's tone. Arthur didn't stop. Artoria, Diarmuid, your duel has drawn eyes. There's no way we're the only ones here. You others, the ones hiding, come out and face us. A few meters away, Irisveal shivered, fearing that Kuritsugu Emiya and their allies' location might be revealed. But Arthur already knew. His instincts as a king never failed him. Pathetic, Arthur declared. Where is your courage? Where is your heroism? Iskander roared with laughter beside him. Heroic spirits summoned into this world, do not disappoint me. Your legends should not be weeping at your cowardice. From afar, Tokiomi Tasaka watched the scene with furrowed brows. Do you really think such provocation will bring them out? Beside him, Kirei Kotomine nodded calmly. Unlikely, but the two magi underestimated the pride of ancient heroes. Suddenly, golden light flared above them, blinding and regal. A figure appeared atop a street lamp, bathed in resplendent brilliance. Waver's breath hitched. That's him. Even if it was only for a second, Waver remembered clearly, the man who obliterated Assassin in an instant. The golden servant, Archer. Gilgamesh looked down at the crowd with contempt burning in his crimson eyes. Are you all so insolent? He sneered. Two mongrels dare to call themselves kings, without this king's permission. There was no holding back. Gilgamesh's arrogance wasn't born of showmanship, it radiated from the very core of his being. Even Iskander looked annoyed. He hadn't expected someone with an even bigger ego. It was irritating. HMPH. Say what you will, but I am the king of conquerors, Iskander replied, undeterred. TCH, Gilgamesh scoffed. There is only one true king, me. The rest of you are insects crawling in the dirt. The tension surged. Arthur, clearly irritated, stepped forward. If you're so high and mighty, why don't you tell us your true name? Iskander, ever patient despite his rising anger, asked again. Indeed, what king hides his name like a coward? Gilgamesh's eyes narrowed. Dangerously. You dare speak to me that way, mongrel? He was seething, but it wasn't just rage, it was disdain. Gilgamesh simply didn't think anyone here was worthy of knowing his name. Since you are so ignorant, I will not sully my glory by bending to your will. Arthur had had enough. Gilgamesh, you're going too far, he growled. Artoria and Iskander, they are true kings. Do not insult them with your arrogance. Gilgamesh turned his venomous gaze on him. You're an outdated relic, don't presume to judge me. He glared harder. And as for you, we will settle our score. After I crush these fools, you're next. Despite his words, it was clear, Arthur held a slightly higher place in Gilgamesh's eyes, though still nowhere near equal. Then came the shift. Ripples distorted the air beside Gilgamesh. One by one, golden portals began to bloom across the night sky, each revealing a brilliant weapon inside. Swords, spears, halberds, treasures of unimaginable power shimmered like stars above them. With a sweeping motion, Gilgamesh declared, Gate of Babylon, open. Chapter 29, The Arthur Pendragon. All the masters present stared at Gilgamesh in shock. The reason was simple: how could someone possess so many noble phantasms at once? At first, they thought Gilgamesh's Gate of Babylon was simply an illusion or that his treasury contained fake replicas. But upon closer inspection, they realized every weapon was genuine. No, more than that. Some were even fragments pieced together from countless treasures across timelines. Meanwhile, somewhere deep in the shadows, a mysterious figure burst into laughter. It appeared. Ha ha ha, it finally appeared. With a wave of his hand, a black shadow emerged behind him and vanished into the darkness. Gilgamesh didn't move from his position. Instead, one by one, noble phantasms launched from his Gate of Babylon, propelled by waves of pure magical energy. Boom, 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 boom. A barrage of treasures hurtled toward the group. Arthur, unfazed by Gilgamesh's arrogance, narrowed his eyes in irritation. Magical energy surged around him, and a brilliant suit of radiant armor began to form across his body. The treasures reached him, but Arthur remained calm. In a flash, a golden sword manifested in his hand. With a single swing, he deflected several noble phantasms effortlessly, sending them crashing into a nearby abandoned building. The structure groaned under the impact, then, boom, the building collapsed in a cloud of dust and rubble. Everyone turned toward Arthur's majestic figure, his golden sword gleaming, his armor shining with an ethereal light. His strength, his presence, left them stunned. But the most shocked of all was Artoria's voice rang out from behind Arthur, hoarse and shaken. Impossible. That sword, how can you have it? There was no mistaking it. Others might be fooled, but she knew, she would never be wrong about this sword. That golden sword that once signified her claim to kingship. It was Caliburn, the golden sword of assured victory. The very sword she had drawn from the stone, the one she had long since lost and thought gone forever. No way, is he? Arthur stepped forward calmly, his voice carrying a regal tone. Everyone, allow me to introduce myself formally. I am Arthur, Arthur Pendragon, King of Britain. I am not a heroic spirit summoned by the Grail, but, given this opportunity, how could I possibly ignore it? His voice was soft, neither as bold as Iskander's, nor as cold as Artoria's, nor as arrogant as Gilgamesh's. There was a distinct indifference in his tone, yet within that indifference was an overwhelming presence, an aura of true royalty that could not be denied. Impossible. There can only be one King Arthur. Artoria's expression turned frantic, teetering on the edge of emotional collapse. And honestly, who wouldn't react that way upon seeing an alternate gender version of themselves? Arthur gave her a faint smile, calm and slightly teasing. Why are you so surprised? You should have known this already. Artoria's eyes widened. She remembered the scene in the theater. Everything suddenly made sense. But, what's so strange? Haven't you seen alternate versions of yourself before? Arthur replied casually, that teasing look on his face pushing her to the brink of exasperation. Her memories resurfaced. 60 years ago, during the Third Holy Grail War, she had been summoned by twin sisters from a foreign land. Those sisters, thanks to a unique bloodline and summoning ritual, could summon the same heroic spirit, but as mirrored opposites, light and dark. That was when she first encountered Black Saber, a version of herself corrupted by hatred and twisted ideals. So yes, Artoria had come to accept parallel selves. But this one, a male version of her, that was something she was not ready for. Still can't accept it? Arthur asked, watching Artoria's ahoge twitch wildly. It was so ridiculous that it was almost comical, but he wisely kept himself from laughing. Ah ha ha ha, ha 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 ha, two voices burst out laughing. Diarmuid managed to stifle his chuckles, but Iskander. He roared without restraint. Oi, so you're the same person. Ha ha ha, this is fantastic. Arthur gave Iskander a weary glance. Not exactly. While Artoria and I both bear the title of King Arthur, our experiences, our worlds, our choices, they're all different. We are different people sharing a legend. Seeing Artoria flustered, Arthur kindly stepped in to ease her discomfort. And truly, while others like Lancer Artoria, Saber Alter, and even Lion King shared a core identity, they were all ultimately variations born of different fates. But Arthur, he was fundamentally something else. Artoria nodded hesitantly. Yes, that's right. Her voice was resolute, but her face clearly showed she wasn't convinced. Enough. You dare mock me with this farce? If you're the same as that woman, then die with her. Gilgamesh's eyes gleamed with fury. He unleashed the Gate of Babylon once again, countless treasures raining down toward the two kings. But then, suddenly, the very earth trembled. A dense surge of magical energy began to gather at the ground. A black mist coalesced into a form, a figure slowly emerged, clad in dark, forbidding armor. But this wasn't armor forged by human hands, it was almost primal, crude, forged of pure black iron. Ominous red light seeped from the gaps between the plates. This was no ordinary heroic spirit. Darkness, malice, death, that's all anyone could feel as they beheld the terrifying presence before them. A new heroic spirit had arrived, but what was it? Chapter 30, The Mad Knight and the King's Rage. It was strange, eerily so. By common sense, heroic spirits manifested through the faith of the world, and that faith always lent them a certain radiance. Be it golden or even blackened, each bore a brilliance of their own. Yet the heroic spirit standing before them had none. His blackened armor radiated no aura of honor, no majesty of legend, only a foreboding, almost suffocating darkness. In that sense, he was closer to assassin than a knight. Could he be an evil spirit? Murmured Gilder softly, his instinct screaming danger. Who the hell is this guy? Diarmuid asked, frowning as he scrutinized the silent figure. He had never encountered a presence like this one before. Hey, I know him, Arthur said with a nostalgic smile, immediately drawing the attention of everyone present. This guy doesn't seem like a caster. Judging by the sheer hostility in his aura, he's a berserker. As the term left Arthur's mouth, a chill ran through the group. Berserkers were beings consumed by rage. Their minds, lost to madness. In exchange, they gained raw power. Oh, little master, take a look at his stats, Iskander said, arms crossed. Waver quickly activated his master clairvoyance, but his face darkened. I can't see anything. What, isn't that supposed to be basic? You're a master, how can you not read a heroic spirit's stats? Diarmuid asked, startled. I don't know, it's veiled. Blocked by something I can't explain. The black-armored berserker stood still, magic thrumming through him like a low growl. A shroud of mystery clung to his presence. Another dangerous variable had entered the battlefield. Artoria's expression tightened as she studied the figure. He's not ordinary. This presence, it's suffocating. Oh, you still don't recognize him? Arthur chuckled cryptically. Artoria glanced at him in confusion. Could Arthur know who this was? She didn't waste time speculating. There were too many enemies already, Diarmuid, the archer who wished to kill them, the chaotic berserker, and the uncooperative rider. One misstep in this tense standoff, and they'd be annihilated. Tension crackled in the air. But the berserker knight of the lake moved. He raised his head, turning his emotionless gaze toward Gilgamesh. A surge of magic exploded from him. Gilgamesh's eyes narrowed. Arthur looking at him was one thing, they were both kings. But for this mutt in armor to glare at him. Impudence. With a snap of his fingers, Gate of Babylon shifted targets, now aimed at the berserker. Turn to ash, mongrel, Gilgamesh snarled. In an instant, golden portals opened and unleashed a barrage of noble phantasms, swords, axes, lances, all roaring through the sky like missiles. Gilgamesh didn't treasure wealth, he threw it. Each artifact was priceless, powerful, ancient, and deadly. The ground shattered under the bombardment, shockwaves flattening everything nearby. It was the same level of destruction that had obliterated Hassan of the cursed arm. But this time, a figure remained standing. From within the cloud of smoke and shattered ground, the berserker emerged. And in his hand, a sword, one of Gilgamesh's own, yet it had changed. Once golden, now it gleamed a deep, ominous black. The other treasures, swatted aside, mid-air. Only a few servants saw what had truly happened. The moment the first weapon approached, Berserker caught it, and with a single sweep, deflected all the rest. What kind of martial skill is that? Diarmuid's voice trembled. Even if he's a berserker, this kind of swordsmanship is absurd, murmured Iskander. A knight never dies unarmed. Gasps echoed across the battlefield. The Dark Knight's brutal precision defied the madness typical of berserkers. He wasn't just a berserker, he was a warrior. You dare touch my collection with your filthy hands? Gilgamesh roared. You'll pay for this. The King of Heroes unleashed a true storm. 16 more noble phantasms, all charged with immense magical energy. Swords, spears, halberds, hooks and chains surged from the gate. Even Waver found himself slack-jawed. He really is a tyrant, over 20 noble phantasms. This is unreal. Gilgamesh didn't understand restraint. I want to see just how much you can take. Golden lights lit up the night like a meteor shower. Each treasure was like a bomb, roaring, crashing, exploding around the lone knight. Yet the Lake Knight didn't retreat. Instead, he advanced. His fighting instinct, knight does not die with empty hands, reached its peak. The more weapons hurled at him, the more weapons he wielded. He caught, deflected, replaced, and swung. Bang, 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 one after another, the divine weapons were countered, scattered across the battlefield. And when the dust settled, only the ground beneath the Dark Knight remained unscathed. The berserker slowly raised his arm, and with unflinching strength, hurled the captured treasure straight back. Gilgamesh dodged easily, but the blade struck the lamppost behind him, exploding into light. Ha! Do you think I'd share the world with vermin like you? Gilgamesh was furious. A blinding light engulfed the night. This time, 32 portals opened. Arthur's expression darkened. He's serious. Why hasn't Tasaka Tokiomi recalled him? Asked Artoria. Arthur sighed. Because Tokiomi knows Gilgamesh is strong, and he trusts his arrogance. But this is too reckless. Arthur glanced at the berserker, at Lancelot. Arthur silently mourned for the one who had to face that storm. Sorry, Lancelot. Then, ha ha ha, this is fun. Mind if I join in? A woman's voice broke through the chaos. A beautiful woman darted across the battlefield, placing herself in front of the Mad Knight. Oh, if you're defeated, what does that make me? Completely useless. Lancelot was here, and the battlefield had only just begun to ignite. Dash 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 dash. Need more chapters. Give this FIC more power stones. Every 250 stones equals 1 bonus chapter. Dash 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 dash. 3 comments 0 vote. Chapter 31. A knight does not die with empty hands. Another one. Gilgamesh narrowed his eyes as he glanced at the newcomers, especially the knight who had just leapt onto the battlefield. His gaze landed on Sir Lancelot. Why are there so many ignorant fools? He scoffed. His words dripped with disdain, his signature arrogance fully on display. Around him, the gates of Babylon opened wider, revealing more and more noble phantasms. Each one pulsed with overwhelming magical energy, forming a cascade of death that rained from the skies. Boom, 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 weapon after weapon rained down like meteorites. The pressure alone could flay skin, the sharpness of each treasure tearing through the air with deadly precision. But then, the Knight of Honor, one after another, weapons were caught. Not dodged, caught, as if bare hands could challenge divinity. The rain of treasures was parried and knocked aside, leaving everyone frozen in shock. How are they doing that? Wait, they both have the same ability. All eyes turned to the two figures standing unshaken amidst the chaos. Murmurs of disbelief spread like wildfire. Then realization dawned. Could it be a different version of the same heroic spirit? It all made sense now. Parallel worlds, alternate timelines, the same spirit summoned in different forms. The revelation sent a shiver down everyone's spine. Who was this heroic spirit that could rival Lancelot du Lac with the same insane ability? The two knights, Sir Lancelot and the Mad Knight, moved in sync, as if choreographed. Their hands seized the noble phantasms mid-flight, countering each one and wielding them with shocking mastery. Unlike Gilgamesh's overwhelming power and barrage, these two fought with sheer instinct and brilliant technique. Their movements were flexible, their counters elegant. Each treasure they caught felt like it had always belonged to them. Clang! The final weapon was knocked aside, and silence fell upon the battlefield. The two knights stood tall amidst the field of scattered treasures. Lancelot raised her head slightly, her eyes locking with the Mad Knight's. Ha ha, looks like I win, she said with a smug grin. It was true. In that flurry of divine weapons, Lancelot had parried and countered 20 of them. The Mad Knight had managed only 12. On the surface, it looked like a clear victory. But the truth was far more nuanced. The Mad Knight had been fighting purely on instinct. His berserker class granted him incredible power, but not much clarity. Like a mindless machine, he reacted, without strategy or finesse. Lancelot, though tired, had fought with wit and control. Her breathing was heavy, and her face was slightly flushed from exertion. The Mad Knight, in contrast, stood eerily calm, his madness strengthening him beyond normal limits. So, was it really a win? The result was unclear. Oi, Gilgamesh, that's enough. Arthur stepped forward, raising a hand toward the Golden King. This fight's meaningless, let's stand down for now. Gilgamesh sneered, you jest. Why should I spare them? Arthur didn't flinch. If you want to fight, then I'll take you on. Gilgamesh arched a golden brow. You, alone? Arthur nodded. Yes, just me. The two locked eyes. Gilgamesh, arrogant as ever, wasn't stupid. He had known Arthur for some time now, they'd even sparred occasionally. And even with his treasures, Gilgamesh understood one thing clearly: if he didn't use Aya, defeating Arthur was far from guaranteed. "Is she yours?" Gilgamesh asked, his tone unreadable. Arthur smirked. "Of course she is. TCH. Master and servant, alike in foolishness." Gilgamesh clicked his tongue and began to summon Aya, the sword of rupture, ready to end this charade. But something changed. Just then, the Mad Knight's posture shifted. His expression grew vacant, almost hollow. In his world, the opponent had already lost. What followed was nothing but emptiness. His eyes glowed crimson. Then he turned, not to Gilgamesh, but to Artoria. "What?" Everyone turned sharply. The Mad Knight's eyes were filled with sorrow and longing. His twisted face morphed into something heart-wrenchingly human, as if a forgotten memory had surfaced. "No, what's happening?" And then, he charged. Like a wild beast, the Mad Knight sprinted toward Artoria, eyes locked on her like a man possessed. Arthur narrowed her eyes. "Oi, what the hell's your problem? Don't act like someone just stole your wife." Chapter 32. The battle is over. Arthur was helpless, and of course, Artoria was speechless at this moment. Mad Knight charged forward like a wild bull, his steps tearing apart the ground beneath him. There wasn't a single intact surface in his path. In his eyes, there was only one target: Artoria. With a roar, Mad Knight ripped a street lamp from the pavement and gripped it tightly in both hands. The knight does not die with empty hands. Boom! The makeshift weapon came crashing down with monstrous force. Artoria braced herself, forced into a defensive stance under the brutal assault. "It seems this guy can turn any object into a noble phantasm," the King of Conquerors observed from the sidelines. "You're right," Lancelot nodded, his gaze fixed on the battle. "But his true strength isn't just that." Among those present, Lancelot understood the threat better than anyone. "Let's finish this, Mad Knight." Arthur stepped forward, raising his sword and pointing it directly at the rampaging berserker. Unfortunately, Lancelot, now berserker, only grew more frenzied at the sight of the golden sword of victory. "Your existence itself is a mistake. Why are you this mad?" "It's not her fault," Arthur shouted. "Arthur," Artoria called out, her tone conflicted. Though uncomfortable, she still said his name. Her heart was uneasy. The moment she realized Lancelot was Arthur's former knight, a terrible premonition surfaced. He knew him, he had to. At that moment, Diarmuid stepped forward as well. "Lancer, what are you trying to do now?" Kenneth barked. "It's time to eliminate another opponent, Berserker." Diarmuid refused, his voice calm. "No," but Kenneth wouldn't have it. He activated a command seal, and Diarmuid's body tensed, forcibly controlled. "My apologies, both King Arthurs. Please stop me," Diarmuid shouted, his body no longer his own. With that, he joined the fray. "I never thought I'd fight alongside myself," Arthur murmured as he engaged the battle. Artoria felt a strange emotion stir at his side. Arthur smiled slightly, then asked her, "Have you figured out who he is?" Of course, he was referring to the Mad Knight. Artoria fell silent. "I think I have, but why would he?" She already knew most of it. This man held the noble phantasm knight does not die with empty hands. He was accepted by King Arthur. His strength mirrored her own. And yet, his hatred toward her was unmistakable. She didn't know the full truth, that Lancelot, now Mad Knight, sought punishment. In her heart, she already knew his identity. "In that case, let's end this," Arthur said calmly. Golden light erupted from his hand. The golden sword of assured victory, Excalibur. A radiant field expanded around Arthur, cloaking the battlefield in invisible power. A heavy, kingly pressure descended. The king's domain had been activated. "Submit, all living beings." Arthur's voice echoed with quiet authority. Mad Knight's rampage began to slow, his movements burdened. "You shall not resist, before the king's throne." At Arthur's second command, Moss Knight Lancelot's body froze completely. Excalibur wasn't just a sword, it was a noble phantasm of control. Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't be enough to stop someone like Mad Knight instantly. But this situation was unique. 1. Mad Knight was a berserker, mindless and emotionally unstable. 2. He felt the holy presence of the golden sword Excalibur and subconsciously longed for the punishment he deserved. 3. As a former Knight of the Round Table, he had little resistance to its kingly authority. All these factors combined allowed Arthur to suppress him. "You, kneel before your king." Arthur's final command rang out like thunder. Mad Knight let out a guttural cry before falling to his knees, crushed by the will of the king. That sword, could it be the legendary sword in the stone? Truly impressive, Iskander muttered, admiring the golden weapon. He didn't intervene. To him, this was a fair 2v2 battle, no need to interfere with honorable duels. That weapon, is it, the one I lost forever? Artoria whispered, her gaze fixed on Arthur. A strange hollowness stirred within her, something she'd never noticed before. Has the Mad Knight finally been dealt with? Arthur exhaled, turning to Diarmuid, who was still clashing with Artoria on the side. Kenneth, Arthur said, his tone serious. You've already crossed the moral boundaries of knighthood. If you persist, I won't show mercy. He looked in the direction of the iron frame where Kenneth was hiding. I know your intentions, but if you don't withdraw now, know that Diarmuid stands no chance against Artoria and me. Artoria let out a sigh, slightly annoyed by how casually Arthur referred to her. How does he even know my name? She wondered. Kenneth finally gave in. He hadn't expected Arthur to neutralize a berserker so quickly. Truthfully, if Arthur hadn't respected Diarmuid so much, he might have already eliminated him. Let's go, Lancer. We're leaving, Kenneth finally ordered. Diarmuid, now freed from the command seal's grip, stepped back. He bowed respectfully toward Arthur. Thank you, King Arthur. Arthur smiled and nodded. You're a true warrior. If you'd like, I can help you sever your bond with your master. He's not worthy of your loyalty. Diarmuid shook his head firmly. Thank you for your offer. But I am bound by loyalty. I cannot abandon him. I'm sorry. Arthur respected his answer. I understand. That is the path of a knight. Diarmuid looked at Artoria and gave a respectful nod. I hope we cross blades again. Artoria nodded back. With that, Diarmuid disappeared into spirit form. The battlefield, now reduced to rubble, was finally quiet. Haha, how amusing. A familiar, arrogant voice rang out. I didn't expect such a clown show to be this entertaining. Gilgamesh had been watching the entire time. He hadn't intervened once. Consider it a reward for your little performance. But next time, mongrels. I won't be so forgiving. With a flash, he vanished into spirit form. And just like that, the battle was finally over. Chapter 33, How to Deal with It. As Gilgamesh vanished into golden particles, Arthur calmly walked toward the kneeling Mad Knight. After a brief moment of thought, he turned to Lancelot beside him. Lancelot, deal with him. Lancelot nodded solemnly. She understood, it wasn't right for Arthur to personally deal with a version of himself, not when that version had become a monster. Taking Arthur's sword, she approached the fallen knight, her expression cold and unwavering. Raising the blade high above the Mad Knight's head, Lancelot muttered to herself, I don't know why, but I feel something's off. And just as she brought the sword down, clang, the sound of steel meeting steel echoed. Wait, the strike was stopped midair. Lancelot's eyes widened in surprise as she followed the clash to its source. It was Artoria, her eyes firm, her grip steady as she blocked the sword. Lancelot looked at her, stunned. Why, isn't this traitor someone the king should execute without hesitation? Her voice trembled with emotion. After all, this man had betrayed King Arthur, her king. He had become a disgrace, a scar on the king's legacy. Unforgivable. When Lancelot had first arrived in this world, she'd learned all about the twisted tale of the Mad Knight. In her rage, she had torn the book apart, and would have burned the entire library if Arthur hadn't stopped her. To her, there was no one more deserving of death. He can't die by your hand, Artoria said coldly. This was my mistake. It's something I must deal with. What? But how can he do this? Lancelot didn't give in. Since he is the same as me, then he should also like. Her words trailed off. Lancelot's eyes widened. Then, without warning, she gasped and slapped her hand over her mouth, realizing what she was about to say. Her gaze snapped to Arthur, filled with complicated emotion. Arthur blinked, puzzled. Why is this girl looking at me like that? Lancelot turned away with a huff. Idiot, she muttered under her breath. Anyway, the Mad Knight deserves death, she declared aloud. Arthur stepped forward and gently took the sword from her. That's true, but, he glanced at the broken figure kneeling before him. He shouldn't be executed by us. With a wave of his hand, the binding suppressing the Mad Knight vanished. From the shadows, Kariamatu, who had been hiding and observing, let out a relieved breath. With a quick command, the Mad Knight's body dissolved into magical energy and vanished. Thank you, Artoria said quietly. At that moment, she truly felt a connection. This King Arthur was the same as her. Arthur simply nodded. It was a small matter. Artoria reached back, taking Irisveel's hand. They began to walk away. But before vanishing from sight, she turned around. "How fares your kingdom?" Arthur smiled gently. "Good weather, bountiful harvests. The four corners of the realm know peace." "That's good," Artoria whispered, her voice almost inaudible. She turned back around, silently thinking, "It seems I made the right choice. If I hadn't become king, maybe her kingdom would have prospered like this." With that, Artoria and Irisfeel disappeared into the night. A booming laugh broke the silence. "Ha ha ha, you two are truly to my taste." It was Iskander, the king of conquerors, laughing heartily as he rode in on his chariot, drawn by divine bulls. The entire scene had stirred something in his heart. "Ha ha, you're to my taste as well," Arthur replied, grinning. "Then it's settled, brother. Until we meet again." Arthur raised a hand. "Very well, but don't expect mercy next time." "Likewise." "Ahahaha." Iskander's laughter echoed as his chariot soared into the sky, disappearing in a trail of divine thunder. Lancelot watched him vanish, raising a brow. "That king is quite something else." Arthur chuckled. "He's wild, but I respect him. Still, he stands on the opposite side, and I on the other side. We'll meet as enemies again. That's how kings are unless..." "Unless what?" Arthur smirked. "Unless one's a man and the other a woman. TCH. Lancelot rolled her eyes, clearly unimpressed. "Anyway, Lancelot, pack up. We're heading to the Einsburn castle tomorrow. Keep an eye on them." "Understood," she said, nodding as she began to vanish into magical particles. "I'll replenish my mana first. Summon me tomorrow." "All right." With that, Lancelot vanished in a swirl of light, and Arthur turned around, disappearing into the night as well. Meanwhile, in Great Britain, Lancelot's residence. "Ah, I'm exhausted," Lancelot groaned as she slumped into a chair. "Lan, you're back." A beautiful woman emerged. It was Guinevere, her eyes filled with concern. "Where have you been? You look dead tired." "You'll never guess what I just experienced." And with that, Lancelot began recounting the wild story. "What? You betrayed Arthur for me?" "Shish, keep your voice down. That wasn't me, it was the other me." Lancelot nearly spat out her tea. Her face flushed in embarrassment. All right, Guinevere said, giggling. "But seriously, if Arthur had kept pursuing me, and I could never be with you, what would you have done?" "What choice would I have? I'd marry Arthur. Either way, I'd still end up with you." "You? What? That's so like you." Lancelot grinned. "Obviously." "Then," Guinevere whispered, "or we could just follow Arthur." "Huh, what did you say?" "And nothing." Thankfully, her words were lost in the quiet, or things might have gone nuclear. Lancelot looked at the guards stationed outside, sword in hand. Maybe, the happiest days weren't these quiet ones at home, she thought. Maybe it was back when we rode into battle beside King Arthur, those were the days that truly mattered. She gazed silently up at the moon. Meanwhile, in the Type Moon world, Tasaka residence. "Welcome back, my king." Tokiomi Tasaka greeted Arthur respectfully. "You're still awake?" Arthur asked. "Yes, I was thinking." Arthur glanced at the table. "Do you have any wine?" "Of course." With a snap of his fingers, Tokiomi summoned a bottle of elegant red wine into the air. Arthur tilted his head. Got any white wine?" "White? Ah, I think a friend left a bottle here once. Let me fetch it." Moments later, Tokiomi returned, presenting a bottle of motai, the famed Chinese white liquor. Just as Arthur reached for it, a golden light rained down. "TCH, drinking without me? That's rude." Gilgamesh, the king of heroes, landed gracefully opposite them. "Golden King, you're back," Arthur greeted without hostility. Tokiomi bowed quickly. "Since it's a banquet for two kings, I'll excuse myself." "Leave." Gilgamesh waved casually, and Tokiomi vanished from the room. The two kings sat in silence, the bottle between them gleaming under the moonlight. Chapter 34. Drinking with Gilgamesh. "Why, the oldest king is actually drinking with me." Arthur looked at Gilgamesh strangely. This guy still has such leisure. Or, does he want to awaken me like he did with Kotomine Kire? Gilgamesh didn't say much. He simply picked up the wine glass and took a sip. Ahem. Gilgamesh choked after the first sip. Not used to white wine, he clearly couldn't adapt to it. "Oh, you can't get used to it? How is that possible?" "It's just that this wine is too poor." Gilgamesh scoffed and summoned a treasure from his gate of Babylon. An ancient jar flew out and hovered beside him. He opened the wine jar, and instantly, a rich fragrance filled the room, intoxicating and divine. Arthur looked at the jar curiously. He didn't know there was such a good thing hidden within Gilgamesh's treasury. What is this? Drunken Truth's wine jar, a B-rank noble phantasm. It has no attack power, or maybe it does, I just haven't tested it. But it continuously produces the finest wine. Smelling the intoxicating aroma, Arthur felt the wine bug in his belly begin to stir. Gilgamesh took out 2 golden goblets, and the two began to drink. I didn't expect you to be the type who could sit down and enjoy wine, Arthur remarked in surprise, watching Gilgamesh sip calmly. When I choose to enjoy myself, I am always calm. But normally, you're just annoying. Arthur didn't hold back, but to his surprise, Gilgamesh didn't get angry. Maybe it was the wine. After all, Drunken Truth's wine had magical properties. Hey, that's because no one in this world is worthy of my face. Not even Enkidu. Oh, so you know my identity. Gilgamesh chuckled. Then admire my glory from afar. You're still as irritating as ever. Likewise, Gilgamesh replied, but his mood remained pleasant, he didn't even bother cursing back. Arthur found that strange. System, scan this wine. Ding dong. Noble phantasm. Drunken Truth. Rank, B. Effect, alters the drinker's state of mind, reveals a side of them not usually seen. As expected of the ancestor of wine. A noble phantasm that brews wine with special properties. Arthur grinned. He had his system, and decent magical power, he could outlast Gilgamesh. After all, how many chances would he get to see the king of heroes make a fool of himself? Enkidu, she, is my best friend. The only one who truly is. Gilgamesh mentioned Enkidu, and his expression softened into nostalgia. You know Enkidu's story, of course. Enkidu was created by the gods of heaven to stop you. A divine weapon with immense power, she was the embodiment of nature, and the only one who could be your equal. Right, Arthur sifted through the knowledge in his head and spoke. That's right, she is my friend, but the gods never let me go. Why is it that only one of us could survive? Gilgamesh's face changed. His overflowing magical energy distorted the air around him. This wasn't just a heroic spirit, this was a being carrying divine wrath. Gilgamesh's voice echoed like a thunderclap, and for a moment, Arthur saw not just a proud king, but a towering sovereign forged from glory and solitude. Arthur smiled. This is your true kingly aura. Not golden boy, Gilgamesh. In his fury, Gilgamesh changed the atmosphere entirely. Winds howled, thunder cracked, lightning split the sky, then, slowly, the world calmed. Gilgamesh exhaled. Would you like to hear a story? I'm all ears, Arthur replied with a smile and a welcoming gesture. Golden Flash looked distant, lost in memory. His voice rang clear and steady. I was called the young king even as a child. Countless times, they called me the greatest king to ever live. Tolerant, just, kind, brave, people praised me endlessly. They admired me. At this, Gilgamesh let out a self-deprecating laugh. Arthur, watching him, couldn't believe it. The proudest man alive, was laughing at himself. Gilgamesh continued, but I only respected the gods. I never obeyed them, and in time, I realized something, though 1,000 people praised me, I was never one of them. Because I was neither god, nor man. I was an alien in their eyes. A stranger. They thought I didn't know, but I did. My identity, my powers, those gifts came with a curse. And my eyes could see through everything. Gilgamesh leaned close, locking eyes with Arthur. There is no fear in your gaze. I'm not afraid of you. No, there is no disgust in your gaze. Arthur paused, then nodded. Perhaps it was true. Gilgamesh had endured everything others could never understand. Isolation, hatred, envy, even admiration laced with fear. Even now, many heroic spirits despised his arrogance, feared his strength, or begrudgingly respected him. But Arthur felt none of it. To him, Gilgamesh was not disgusting. In Arthur's heart, only the mediocre are never hated. Gilgamesh smiled and went on. Yes, immense strength and a burdened identity, it all brought deep loneliness. But I never abandoned my mission. I served the people, yet no matter how much I honored the gods, no matter how I protected the people, it was never enough. So, I changed. I began to love treasures. I began to indulge in luxury. And so what? Let the world call me greedy. Let the gods scorn me. If I'm wrong, then I'll make that mistake to the end. Gilgamesh was no longer just drunk, this was his heart. His soul, his pain, a perfect king, cursed to be hated. You're drunk, Gilgamesh. No, I'm not drunk, it is the world that is drunk, not me. Bang, Arthur suddenly slapped Gilgamesh across the face. Wake up, You dare strike me? So what? Arthur's voice thundered. Where is the Gilgamesh I admire? The Gilgamesh who defied the gods for his friend. The Gilgamesh who never regretted his choices. The Gilgamesh who rejected divine orders and followed his heart. The Gilgamesh who, even torn to pieces, would fight for his kingdom and his people. The Gilgamesh who dared to face the bull of heaven head-on. Arthur stood tall, looking straight into Gilgamesh's eyes. What are you doing? Running away from responsibility, doubting yourself. You say, if I'm wrong, then let me be wrong forever. Was that ever truly you? Wrong. Don't make me look down on you. Arthur turned and walked away, leaving behind a stunned Gilgamesh. Maybe everyone questions themselves, but once you've chosen your path, you walk it without hesitation. If you can't trust yourself, why should the world? Arthur disappeared into the hall. Gilgamesh stood frozen, watching Arthur's fading figure, and for a brief moment, he saw Enkidu. She had spoken to him like that once. He forgot the slap, forgot his anger. A few minutes later, Gilgamesh returned to his chambers. He stood before a mirror, his hand resting on his cheek. Was I wrong? He muttered. Then his gaze steeled. Right or wrong, I have those who believe in me. What do I have to fear? And he laughed. The king of heroes had returned. Golden light enveloped him. Piece by piece, he removed his shining golden armor and stepped into the bath. Steam rose. Then, something unexpected, he peeled something off his face. What? In the misty bathroom, a stunning beauty emerged. Long legs, snow-white skin, a heavenly face, and a devilish figure. Gilgamesh was a woman. This guy, it still hurts. Looking at the bright red handprint on her face in the mirror, she, female Gilgamesh, pouted adorably, her furious expression charmingly cute. HMPH. I'll definitely pay him back for this. The angry beauty had her own charm. One had to wonder, if Arthur saw this scene, would he still dare slap her? Chapter 35. A different Gilgamesh. Good morning, everyone. With the first rays of morning sunlight streaming in, Arthur descended the stairs, still feeling the lingering dizziness from last night. Who would have thought that the wine called drunken truth was that potent? Good morning, Arthur replied casually, but then froze. Wait a second, was that Gilgamesh who just greeted him? What's with that look in your eyes? Gilgamesh glanced at Arthur with her usual air of superiority and disdain. Is it so strange that a king would greet you? I'm flattered, Arthur muttered. Then accepted with gratitude, Gilgamesh said plainly, sipping her tea with elegance. Your words are still as irritating as ever, Arthur sighed, shaking his head. He eyed Gilgamesh, who was calmly having breakfast across the table. But something felt different today. Speaking of yesterday, nothing happened yesterday. Let's just eat. Gilgamesh cut him off, a little too quickly. The sudden shift in tone was suspicious. Arthur raised a brow. That sounded way more awkward than it should have. Of course, Arthur had no idea that the Gilgamesh in front of him wasn't the typical golden tyrant of legend, just someone feeling a tinge of post-drunken embarrassment. A common occurrence after a night of overindulgence. Gilgamesh, on the other hand, was mentally cursing herself. Why did this fool bring up yesterday again? Doesn't he know how humiliating that was? Choosing silence, Arthur lowered his head and focused on his food. Once breakfast was done, Arthur stretched, ready to step out. But just as he was about to leave, a soft voice called out behind him. Arthur, are we friends? Arthur turned, surprised. Gilgamesh had spoken those words almost like a whisper, so quiet that only his enhanced heroic spirit hearing picked it up. Wait, Gilgamesh. Embarrassed, Arthur blinked. Could it be, this king, who usually treats everyone like ants, was feeling self-conscious? Maybe it was because he's only ever had one friend before. His emotional intelligence must be near rock bottom. Still, it was kind of endearing. Of course, Arthur said without hesitation. Otherwise, who would drink with you? That single line, so casual, so natural, struck deeper than Arthur realized. Gilgamesh's heart, so often untouched by kindness, warmed. Thank you. The king of heroes smiled, a rare, genuine smile. Arthur looked away awkwardly. That smile is making me uncomfortable. Since we're friends now, Arthur said suddenly, why don't we go out together? Go out, yes, shopping. Arthur, the eternal lazybones, wanted to go shopping. Shocking. But then again, both Lancelot and Bedivere were out on errands. He had nothing to do. Plus, seeing Gilgamesh still dressed in ancient armor made Arthur itch for a change. This was the perfect excuse to modernize him. Fine, Gilgamesh nodded after a moment of thought. Consider it a reward for acknowledging me as a friend, she told herself. And so, the two walked into the city. Unsurprisingly, they drew attention everywhere they went, not because of their fame, but because of their stunning looks. Two handsome young men walking side by side. That's bound to turn heads. TCH. These insects dare to look at me like that. Gilgamesh narrowed her eyes. Gilgamesh, don't you dare. Arthur quickly grabbed her arm. What is it now? Why are you so pissed off? Arthur gestured around. Look, they're clearly admiring you more than me. Gilgamesh looked around. Indeed, most of the stares were directed at her, gaze filled with awe, not mockery. HMPH. Seems these mongrels still possess some semblance of aesthetic sense. I shall forgive them, for now. Narcissist, Arthur muttered under his breath. What was that? Nothing. Arthur quickly pulled Gilgamesh along before she exploded. After walking around for a while, Arthur noticed that Gilgamesh had gradually relaxed. Even if heroic spirits were born of legend and filled with knowledge, experiencing the world firsthand was different. I'm surprised I haven't gone mad spending time with you, Arthur commented. What did you just say? Nothing important. Arthur turned away innocently, but Gilgamesh narrowed her eyes suspiciously. That face, you definitely said something rude. I only said that if you didn't go mad today, that would be interesting. At the very least, this outfit suits you. Quote. Gilgamesh clenched her fist, resisting the overwhelming urge to punch him in the face. Do I look strange? No, you look great. Honestly, you're very handsome. You have good taste, Gilgamesh said, clearly satisfied. Arthur had chosen a white formal suit for Gilgamesh, sharp, tailored, and stylish. It complemented Gilgamesh's golden hair and striking features, making heads turn wherever she went. But hey, what's that in your hand? Arthur pointed to a paper bag that Gilgamesh was trying to hide. Nothing, Gilgamesh said quickly, stuffing it behind her back. Arthur reached to snatch it, but just then, a gentle voice interrupted them. Excuse me, may I pass through? Arthur and Gilgamesh both turned. Arthur's eyes widened. Another you, Gilgamesh muttered with a curious look, then smirked at Arthur. But Arthur was frozen in place. That outfit, that aura. Jeanne d'Arc.